Okay, we needed a big reaction following our loss to Manchester United at Old Trafford, right? Did we get it? No. To be brutally honest, this wasn't a great performance. Again, really poor. The first half was, you can't even really put it into words, right? It was that bad against League One opposition. We can have a look at Lincoln City here, right? Look, they're in League One. We really should be completely dominating them. And, yes, we had a lot of the possession. But in the first half, we didn't have a single shot on target. Yes, we turned it around in the second half, but we shouldn't need Maresca to, go crazy in the changing rooms and, absolutely give him a bollocking. We shouldn't need it to get to that stage. We should have been, from the get go, dictating the play and suffocating them. And what was the actual case was they were suffocating us, right? Yes, we had possession, but we gave them so many opportunities. Their press, I thought, was really good. Obviously, a hostile atmosphere. That's what I was thinking going into the game. There was always that bit of a risk factor going into this game, right? Poor form away from home, against clearly lesser opposition. The fans are going to be up for it and it's going to be a rotated side. But even then, I was thinking we should at least. This is a game we should be winning like 3-0 comfortably, right? Or at least a 3 goal cushion. Yes, they maybe get a goal, but let's go out and win 4-1 or something like that, right? And not so much the result, to be honest. I'd much wanted to see a performance. You know, Results come and go, but if we're consistently a good team, naturally we're going to get good results, right? But this wasn't the case. We got the result, but the performance again, subpar, really poor. We'll go through the players now, but first half created nothing. Enzo, I don't know what he was doing, basically gave them a goal. It's just really poor all around. Our goalkeeper can't claim any cross. He comes out and he tries to punch the ball and he misses every single time. Like, thank God this guy isn't a boxer, right? He wouldn't be landing any punches. So let's get into the players. First half was really poor. Yes, we looked okay in the second half, but come on, it's Lincoln City. If we need to, drill into them in the changing room and change some of the tactics, why didn't we get that right going into the game? So definitely a few question marks surrounding this performance. Jorgensen, horrific. Really, really bad. Like I say, couldn't claim any crosses. Was missing every punch he came out for, right? His handling was poor. He was dropping the ball into dangerous areas, almost gave them a goal. Positioning wasn't great. Just a really poor performance. And we know Sanchez can have his moments, right? But let's hope Sanchez doesn't get injured. Because if we have Jorgensen as our main starting goalkeeper in the Premier League and then the Champions League, it's not going to be pretty. We are not keeping a clean sheet for the foreseeable future if that's the case. He's clearly not at this level. Well, how much we spend for him? 20, 25 mil on him? I don't know where we saw that value, to be honest. It's not looking good. So, if you can't have a good performance against the League One team, to be honest, it's not looking good at all. So, that's our backup keeper. So, everyone can moan about Sanchez, and for sure he has his bozo moments. He can switch off, he can give away a pen, he can get a red card. We know that. But as an overall keeper, come on, guys. He's miles clear of Jorgensen. Anyone can see that. And let's hope Sanchez stays fit, because if he does get injured, the sporting directors have massively, screwed us for this season. We definitely should have got another keeper. I know we got Mike Penders on loan, but we can't rely on him. He's too young and he needs to go elsewhere, right? We can't afford to gamble with our season. We should have definitely reinforced, got another keeper. Jorgensen, you can be third choice, but we need someone challenging for Sanchez. So if Sanchez has a bad game or he's suspended, we got someone wanting to take his place. With Jorgensen, he's only ever going to be a backup. And as a backup, he's not even good enough. We're lucky it was Lincoln. Against stronger opposition, for sure we would have lost this game. It just wasn't good enough. It's all around, right? You know, to be fair, the back line in the first half, we couldn't play out from the back at all. which, if Maresca's system is all about playing out from the back, not going long balls, not going diagonal, we remaining composed, beating the press and playing out from the back, that's our style of play, and we couldn't even implement that against Lincoln. You can't tell me the atmosphere was a factor, because we're going to have games in the Champions League like we had at the Allianz. We're going to much harder stadiums than the one we went to here, right? So I don't want to hear any excuses that, Lincoln City, away from home is a hostile environment. We're going to be playing a lot harder teams than that, and a lot more fierce stadiums. If we had to go to Marseille away, or Napoli, what are we going to do? We're going to shit ourselves. Like, we're going to absolutely bottle it. So Gusto, I think, had a decent performance. More license to get forward, which is what he wants to do. Don't really like him inverting into midfield or anything like that. That we should stick that to Reece James or any other players. That's not his profile. He's basically a winger. So he's like turned into a right back, right? So I thought he had a decent performance. Fofana, it was okay, right? I mean, we can't say too much. We didn't keep a clean sheet. Certain headers, I feel like him and Chalobah should have won and they didn't. I feel like in the air, they did bully us a little bit, especially in the first half. Now, Chalobah technically is at fault for the goal, but, what is Enzo doing? Like, smacking that pass straight at him, setting him up to fail. I wouldn't say Chalobah had a great performance. Fofana probably edges it for me. And it's a shame that Chompyong was ill. Or was he ill? I guess Maresca will come out and claim he was, but there's something, weird going on there for sure. The fact that he only played on the opening day and we haven't seen him since, nothing at all. It really begs the question, has he fallen out with Maresca? Has something behind the scenes happened? Because he's so talented, and especially for a game like this, I really wanted him to play. He was in my starting lineup, right? But if he is ill, he's ill, right? So just like Esteval was, a week ago, it is what it is, right? I thought Joel Hato actually had a decent game. I quite like him when he's inverting a bit more defensively. Obviously, you can't play that Cucurella role, right? When we wanted him to get forward more, he didn't look comfortable getting into the final third. But you can tell he's quite tidy in possession, comfortable on the ball. I thought, if we're going to play him left back, I want him as that inverted left back. I don't want him inverting into midfield like Cucurella, progressing, getting forward. That's not his play style. I don't think we'll get the best out of him. But if we're going to line up like this, it means Gusto can get forward more. So I'm not opposed to this sort of backline. I think it does kind of work well if we're going to play well, which we certainly didn't. But you can kind of see the vision, and I don't mind Hato if he's going to play more defensive. If he's trying to do the Cucurella role, it's not going to work. There's no point, right? Andre Santos, maybe man of the match for me. Absolutely has to start against Brighton. I don't want to see Enzo Fernandez starting for Brighton. We'll get on to him, but Andre, it wasn't at fault for his yellow card. He had to do it because obviously, they were in behind and it was a foul he had to make, but it wasn't his doing. I think, look, won the most duels in the match. I think as a box-to-box presence, I prefer him more as an 8 than a 6. If we play, I want to see him with Caicedo. I think that midfield can cook. Caicedo is naturally going to be the more 6 defensive orientated. And I'd like Andre Santos, we can utilise his off-the-ball movement a lot more. Not necessarily the Enzo role, where we see him developing into a 10 in possession, right? But for sure, Andre Santos, I like him as a box-to-box, more of an 8. But yes, he can do the 6 role, but I think we waste a lot of his qualities. But, in terms of winning duels, in stamina, work rate, he's got it all, right? So he works for the team. I want to see him next to Caicedo for Brighton. I think that's the pivot we need. Enzo, shocking performance. I mean, if he's playing against Lincoln, it's really questionable. No, made an error that led to goal. Got a booking. Got subbed off. He shouldn't play the full game anyway. I didn't want him starting this game, but we're a bit, short in the midfield position. Obviously, Asugo's injured, Lavia's injured. Whether we throw out Reggie Walsh there or Raksaki, we're going to have to look to the academy if we don't play Enzo, right? So I can see why he started, but I wouldn't have started him. I think He's in such poor form. He needs to sit on the bench, and he needs a big wake up call. But it just seems like Maresca seems scared to bench him, to be honest. So against Brighton in the match, preview and everything for that game, he's on the bench. He's not starting. I want to see Caicedo next to Andre Santos. I want to see what that partnership looks like. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you know what? At least we tried. Instead of keep playing Enzo, he looks like he's either tired. He's just in poor form. He needs to sit on the bench for sure. He's just not performing. Gittins, I thought in the first half, he was probably the only player I thought was actually playing well. The whole team were awful in that first half, but Gittins was one that could walk away. He actually played quite decent, tidy feet, good dribbling. This is what I expected from Gittins. When we signed him, I thought, clear upgrade on Sancho. This is the actual dribbler winger in the squad. We haven't seen that yet in the cameos we have had or the games he's started, right? But obviously, if he can perform a bit more like he did, especially in the first half, that's what we want to see, right? But for me, he's still down the pecking order. Whether he's in over Garnacho on the left wing quite at the moment, I'm not too sure. I liked him more on the left than when he was on the right, when they were interchanging right in the game. But I thought it was a pretty decent performance by him, nothing too bad. But Bonate, I thought had a pretty good performance. Good tight dribbling on the goal, tidy in possession, right? You can tell he's a Maresca kind of player. He's technical, low centre of gravity. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was amazing. But for Lincoln, it's the sort of game he should be turning up. You're second string to Cole Palmer, so these are the kind of games you're going to start in because we need to rest Palmer for the bigger games, right? So look, it wasn't amazing. It wasn't like, let's start him against Brighton. It was unbelievable. But I think the fact he played 90 minutes is positive. He definitely needs to play more minutes, right? And it just remains to be seen with Palmer, right? Is he going to need surgery on that groin, or are we going to keep giving him injections and try and get him through maybe to the winter period and then he takes surgery? Let's see. For sure, the groin is a big problem for Palmer. And whether Bonate can fill that gap, personally, I don't think so. But he's not a bad player. And I think if he plays more, he's definitely going to develop a bit. He's still young. And he is quite exciting. He can shoot. He's a threat from outside the box. And he's got quite tidy dribbling. So he's not a bad player. But is it a Xavi Simons? Is it a Fermin Lopez? It's not. It's not quite right. And I just feel like we could have strengthened more in the summer. The goalkeeper one is the big blunder, for sure. Garnacho, I wouldn't really say it was a bad performance, but, hooked at the 60th minute. He was trying in the first half. Gittins, I thought, was the better winger out of the two. His pace is useful. Against high lines, for sure, Garnacho is going to be a good asset, right? But I think when teams are playing this low block and trying to hit us on the counter-attack, Garnacho doesn't offer much. And we kind of saw that at United as well. So it depends how we want to line up and utilise him, right? I think Neto is in over him, and Estevao is going to make that right wing position his. So Garnacho is probably, that 30-minute off the bench option. And if Pedro Neto's in poor form, it's either Gittins or Garnacho starting ahead of him. So he needs to do more if he wants to, really warrant a start. I wanted him to start against United, though, to be fair, and we didn't see him a feature at all. But it wasn't a bad performance, not too bad. George, but Mob gave him man of the match. I don't know if I'd give him man of the match. Took his goal excellently. The shot from outside the box, wonderful technique. The ball's coming back at him. He doesn't really, take a stride and really hit it. It's just pure technique, and just fizzes across inside off the post. So took his goal really well. Technically got the assist as well. Although, Bonate did most of the work on the goal, right? Wasn't, an absolute beauty of a through ball. So, yes, he got the assist, but I think that he's not really a centre forward, though. I wanted Schwimwaker to start in my match preview. But maybe he just sees Tyreek George ahead, and the fact that he was meant to go out on loan to Fulham, and we tried to sell him to Roma. perhaps he's trying to just keep him happy and play him a bit more in these games. But I feel like Moika could have started, but Tyler George playing as that centre forward position, not too opposed to it. Although I definitely see him more as a winger slash shadow striker more than a striker. And then the players who came on, Estevao, when he came on, definitely lively. Needs to start against Brighton. Started against United, didn't get to show anything, played 5 minutes. Had some nice pieces to play. Could have got an assist later on in the game. Yeah. And, it's Estevao. We just need to see him play more. And he's going to develop into a wonderful winger, I'm sure. Cucurella, came on, did a bit, we know what he's going to do, hustle, work rate, and progress to play. And it's the same, Pedro Neto didn't do much either. Sean Waker wasn't involved too much, to be honest. But we weren't really feeding him. We didn't really give him any opportunities. So as a striker, it's not like he could really showcase much to us at all. It's kind of why I wanted him to start, because at least it's some senior football for him. He's banging in the goals in the academy level. I think even if he came off 50th minute or something like that, at least, he started the game, got a bit of minutes from there. Because in the first half, I think we had just no presence up top. They were sitting deep. We had all the possession, not a single shot on target. I think we need a striker. We need a body in the box. Otherwise teams can just sit back and we can't break them down. Teams know how to play against us now, right? And then Reggie Walsh just got a little cameo. Nothing. Came on for what, 20 seconds? So there we go. So the main takeaways from this game, right? First half was awful. Again, we're looking out of ideas. Jorgensen, hall of shame performance. Thank God Sanchez is back for the game at Brighton. His suspension counts. So that's all I can say. Because Jorgensen, he cannot claim anything. He cannot. He misses the ball. I don't know if he had a little smoke before the game. And his reactions were a little off or what happened, but, it just wasn't good enough. And that's been the story for Chelsea for the last 2 weeks now, hasn't it? So we move with fixtures. So the game against Brighton just won their Carabao Cup game as well. This is not going to be easy. If I'm being honest, it's a must win. We really need to go out here and win, but are we going to play? Are we going to perform and come away with the win? Defensively, we're all over the place. We don't look like we're keeping a clean sheet anytime soon, right? So we're going to have to outscore them. And that's going to be the story all season, I think. We're going to have to outscore teams. We cannot defend. We don't have a world-class goalkeeper. We don't have a world-class centre-back. So we're just not going to keep any clean sheets. We have no experience. There's no spine. So we're going to have to rely on Palmer, Estevao, João Pedro, players like this to just get us goals. Otherwise, we're not going to win games. So I'll do the match preview for that on Friday, the day before. 3 o'clock kickoff. Not the biggest fan of, at least it's not an early kickoff. If it was an early kickoff for sure, I'm like, we're drawing or we're losing this game. Chelsea on early kickoffs never result in anything positive. So we'll see. Brighton, they haven't had the best start to the season. And Spurs did, they should have won. They should have beat them, to be honest. So we'll see. They can't keep clean sheets, but neither can we. So there's definitely goals in this game. It should be a fun watch for a casual. For a Chelsea fan, maybe not so much. But at least we beat Lincoln. Right, boys. So I'll see you tomorrow. And that's the game for today. So peace.